Right now, breaking news on News Channel 8.
We have a live update right now on the Seminole Heights serial killer case.
Yes, we're hearing right now from state attorney.
Investigated crime scenes, reviewed probable cause affidavits, studied surveillance videos, analyzed witness statements, and examined physical evidence. My team and I have met separately with each of the victims' families. We did this work in preparation for the most serious and sobering decision that I make as the state attorney for this community, whether to seek the death penalty. After reviewing the evidence, analyzing the legal factors, speaking with the victims' families, and taking time for the quiet reflection that this tremendous responsibility demands, I've determined that for the murders of Benjamin Mitchell, Monica Hoffa, Anthony Naboa, and Ronald Felton, this office will seek the sentence of death against Howell Donaldson III. The law is clear. The death penalty is reserved for the most aggravated and least mitigated capital offenses. This case, in which the defendant murdered 4 innocent victims in a cold, calculated, and premeditated manner, qualifies. A prosecutor's pursuit of justice should be tempered by mercy, but some crimes are so unconscionable, so hard to fathom, that we must leave mercy to a higher power and instead focus on achieving justice for the victims and their families. I understand that some in our community will agree with my decision, some will not. But the decision to seek death is not about what's popular or politically convenient. It requires far more than that. My obligation is to thoroughly evaluate the evidence to determine whether there's a legal basis for the death penalty, and to consider the wishes of the victims' families for how we best achieve justice for their loved ones. And that is exactly what we did. I want to thank the victims' families. During the worst moments of their lives, they've taken the time to meet with me, our homicide prosecutors, and our counselors. They've chosen to participate in this process, fighting through their anger and their tears, and we are grateful for their trust. A case like this touches thousands of lives. To all the law enforcement officers and investigators who worked so hard on this case, thank you. Your outstanding efforts make justice possible for all of us. To the community members who provided valuable information that led to the defendant's arrest, thank you. Your cooperation inspires us to look out for each other. And to my team of prosecutors and staff, because of your excellence and diligence, this community is safer and stronger each and every day. To everyone watching, please keep the victims and their families in your thoughts and in your prayers. This prosecution cannot bring back Benjamin, Monica, Anthony, or Ronald, but we can seek justice for their deaths, and we will. Be happy to take any questions.
What were some of the things you had to go through in your mind to make that decision, please?
The death penalty is for the worst of the worst. Crimes that are far more egregious than the typical murder. And that's exactly what we have here. We have 2 of the most serious aggravating factors: that the defendant killed 4 innocent victims, and that he did so in a cold, calculated, and premeditated manner.
How instrumental was the victims' families when it came to your decision?
The victims' families' decisions are important. Some of the victims' families prefer the death penalty. Others' victims' families preferred a life sentence. But all of the victims' families were okay with the choice to proceed with a death sentence. Ultimately, they placed their trust in me and in this office, and that's humbling. And ultimately, we all recognize that nothing that we do can bring back their loved ones.
Before you said you would look at you would consider his mental well-being, and you've said before that you would not pursue the death penalty if you feel that the crime was committed by someone who had a mental illness. So do you believe that he's mentally ill in some way?
There is no evidence of mental illness or any other mitigating factor that gives us pause about our decision to go forward.
If you had the chance to interview Mr. Donaldson's parents like you are trying to do, did they have an opportunity to sway or mitigate your decision?
I'm heartbroken for Mr. Donaldson's parents. No one can truly sympathize with the terrible situation that they're in.
Is your legal process with them now moot because this decision's been made?
No. We're going to see if we can find a resolution on Friday. We believe that Mr. and Mrs. Donaldson have valuable information that can shed light on the defendant's actions and his motives. And as much as I empathize with their terrible situation, they have a legal duty to provide that information. The community deserves that information, and frankly, we owe it to the victims' families to seek it.
Does that mean you would still pursue for them to go to jail if they do not give those answers or information to investigators?
We're not at that point yet. We're still trying to find a resolution where they're willing to provide us with the information about this case.
Have they softened their stance at all as far as talking to you?
Again, we're working with them to try to find a solution where we can get the information that is warranted for this investigation so that we can seek justice for the victims.
Can you go over again? We know that there have been family members that were really outspoken against the death penalty. I mean, what did you say to them in regards to maybe getting them on board with their support?
I have tremendous respect for the victims' families and what they're going through. And for that reason, I'm not going to get into specifics of what we discussed.
Which family members did you speak with? Was it only the parents of each victim, or were there other relatives as well?
There are other relatives as well. We've spoken with the immediate family members for each of the 4 victims' families. Over the past 56 days since Mr. Donaldson was arrested, and the 50 days before that from Benjamin Mitchell's murder.
How does this weigh on you personally? Of course, there are some state attorneys in this state who are very outspoken against the death penalty. When it comes to your individual thoughts, can you elaborate on those a little bit?
The death penalty is, as I've said, the most serious and sobering decision that a state attorney can make. The death penalty should be limited to the worst of the worst offenders. And frankly, it should be hard to obtain a verdict of death. That's why I applaud what the legislature did last year to require a unanimous verdict in order to obtain a death sentence.
Did you speak with Governor Rick Scott before making your decision, and if so, what did he say to you?
I've spoken with the governor throughout the investigation to keep him apprised as to what was going on. I spoke with him this morning after I made a decision as a courtesy to let him know.
What did he say to you?
The governor wished me well in the prosecution of the case and offered his support to do whatever he can to support the victims and their families.
Are you going to prosecute this case yourself, sir?
We have a team of talented prosecutors here in our homicide division. I've been working closely with them since October 9th when Benjamin Mitchell was murdered. We'll continue doing that until the case is ready to go to trial.
How concerned are you about any political backlash as a result of you making this decision today?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
How concerned are you about any political backlash regarding this decision that you had to make today?
The death penalty is a politically charged issue, but my focus isn't on the politics. My focus is on doing what's best to hold the defendant accountable for these crimes.
Do you think the defendant will get a fair trial in this county, considering all the publicity at this point?
Yes, I do.
Have you learned anything new about the possible motive for why he committed these crimes?
I've promised to be as transparent as possible throughout this process. And in fact, we're holding this meeting today so that I can explain my decision and answer questions about it. But to protect the integrity of the prosecution, I can't comment on specific evidence at this point.
Why do you feel he would get a fair trial in Tampa?
Our system is geared towards providing defendants with a fair trial. We have an amazing constitutional system that provides so many safeguards for them, and we see no reason why that wouldn't be sufficient in this case. Any additional questions?
Can you talk about the timeline for a trial? I mean, I've heard anywhere from 5 years.
All right, just there, you heard breaking news. State Attorney Andrew Warren has announced he will seek the death penalty against Howell Donaldson III, who is accused of shooting and killing 4 people in the Seminole Heights community.
Yeah, the state attorney said this is the most sobering decision that a state attorney can make. But he said he went over the evidence, he talked with the victims' families, and he had quiet reflection on before he made this decision. And then he told the governor, as a courtesy to him, that this is where he was going with this.
Yeah, he's saying that the death penalty is reserved for the worst of the worst crimes, calling this one of those crimes. So our Corey Davis is at the news conference right now, and we will have him in a live report coming up at 11 o'clock. For more on this breaking news story, you can log on to our website, WFLA.com, or you can download our free News Channel 8 app.
And look for the latest on this breaking news on WFLA.com. And again, we will be right back here at 11 a.m. for our regularly scheduled newscast. And we send you back to daytime.